Please take seats. And I'll be quick because we know this gentleman. General Hokanson needs little introduction to this audience, but that's not going to stop me. The alignment on the issues has never been closer between National Guard Bureau and NGAUS than it has been the last couple of years under his leadership. Zero-cost TRICARE is our association's #1 priority. It's also General Hokanson's top legislative priority. NGAUS believes it's critical to maintain all 25 Air National Guard fighter squadrons. General Hokanson has been adamant that all 25 must be retained. Another NGAUS priority is a Space National Guard. General Hokanson's essentially been the lone voice atop the Pentagon fighting for Air National Guard space professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, our Chief, General Dan Hokanson.
Thank you. Please take your seats. After that video, I'm going to do a mass re-enlistment ceremony in the back. So if you guys just want to meet me back there, we'll start the day off right. Distinguished guests, soldiers, airmen, family, and friends, all teammates, it's great to be back here in the Silver State for the 145th NGAUS Conference. I'd like to thank Major General Berry for welcoming us back to Nevada. I'd like to thank Major General Boyos, the Board of Directors, and the folks at NGAUS, and our industry partners for giving us the opportunity to come together. Thank you for your support of our National Guard and all you do to make this conference a success. I'd also like to take a minute to acknowledge the folks who are not here. Our Guardsmen serving all around the world, particularly our Guardsmen responding to the catastrophic fires in Hawaii. They are keeping our promise to America. They are always ready, always there when our nation and our communities need us. If I could take you back to the video just for a second, I think it really captures today's National Guard. Guardsmen in every zip code, proven in combat, protecting our homeland and keeping our promise to America. That is absolutely who we are and what we do. And what we do is very, very important. We can measure it in personnel days. Last year alone, we spent almost 7.5 million days supporting our combatant commands. We rescued 8,500 people from disasters. We added 4 partner nations, Norway with Minnesota, Oman with Arizona, New Jersey with Cyprus, and Samoa with Nevada. To our now 100 partner nations, I'd like to say thank you. What we do in the National Guard is important and inspiring, but we don't always talk about the why. Why do we wear this uniform? Why do we deploy our formations overseas? Why do we train? Why do we serve? And why do we give up our most valuable asset, our time, for something greater than ourselves? Today, I want to talk about why. I want to talk about why a local force matters, why a global reach matters. I want to talk about why your service matters, why readiness matters, and why your impact is bigger than you'd imagine. And in doing so, I want to give you an update on the initiatives we've discussed last year and why we continue to pursue them. So first, let's talk about why we serve. And that's really where it all begins, with you, our people, our soldiers, airmen, and our families. We serve because there is a calling inside each and every one of us to really make a difference. We seek challenges, wanting to do more, learn more, and be more. We are driven by an innate internal force to do something good. The 1% who bears the weight of our national and global security and defends the international rules-based order. The rare drive that leads us to take an oath to our Constitution is the same drive that propels us into action, both in and out of uniform. On May 20th, 7 New York National Guard MPs were on their way to a training exercise when they noticed a car accident on Long Island's Sunrise Highway. An F-150 had smashed into a Dodge Charger, and 2 people were trapped inside the sedan. The guardsmen on the scene were not only MPs. In their civilian lives, they were EMTs, police officers, and a medical student. Combining their military and civilian training, they responded immediately, cutting the airbags, getting the victims out of the car into a safe location, and stabilizing them until the ambulance arrived. They didn't drive by or call and wait for help to arrive. They took action. Because of their call to serve and their drive to make a difference, those New York Guardsmen kept their promise to be always ready, always there. And that is just one more reminder: your personal character plays a fundamental role in who you are and who you become. It is something you must hold with the utmost regard. It dictates not only how others view you, but even more importantly, how you view yourself. And ultimately, your character determines what you do when it counts the most. When faced with a crisis, some people freeze, unsure what to do. Some people flee, running away from danger. But some people fight back, and a rare, special few fight for the lives of others. That's what being a guardsman is all about. You, our soldiers and airmen, are why we are able to do all the things that we can do. You deploy, you respond, you train, and you lead. We recognize your service and your sacrifices, and that is why we are committed to ensuring you have opportunities and the care that you need. It's why we continue to fight for no-fee health care for our guardsmen. There is a new health care for our troops bill in the House, and no-fee dental bills in both the House and the Senate. And earlier this summer, the Senate introduced legislation that would allow current guardsmen to access the VA for primary care. On one hand, this is good news. Congress is recognizing there's a problem when 20% of the joint force doesn't necessarily have access to health care. And although there is still no unified National Defense Authorization Act language, we're getting closer. But that's only part of the picture. Guardsmen in a drill status or in state active duty are ineligible for TRICARE Prime and have to find other options to maintain medical readiness. And more than 237,000 guardsmen live outside of TRICARE Prime service areas. And that's why we established an operational planning team to address and develop recommendations around no-fee health care and find ways to address access and continuity of care challenges unique to the National Guard. Going forward, we'll continue to pursue no-fee health care for all National Guardsmen. We'll continue to develop critical partnerships with the Defense Health Agency, Veterans Affairs, our parent services to close the health care gap coverage. We'll continue to support efforts to expand the pool of mental health care providers. We'll continue to pursue expanded VA eligibility options for guardsmen, and we'll continue to seek greater access across the TRICARE spectrum. Why? Because our guardsmen need and deserve that coverage. Healthcare isn't the only area where we've made progress over the past year. At last year's conference in Columbus, I talked about expanding telework where it made sense for our force. And in May of this year, we formally established the NGB Telework and Remote Work Program. The program is designed to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of our workforce, both military and civilian. Not only is it a tool for operational readiness, it helps us support, recruit, and retain a resilient and productive workforce. Why did we establish the Telework and Remote Work Program? Because it gives our people both opportunity and the flexibility they need. When we talk about why we serve, we must also talk about the fact we neither serve alone nor serve for ourselves alone. We also serve for our families, to provide for them and build them a safer world. We know our National Guard families make sacrifices, and we know how important those sacrifices are to our ability to do our jobs. And that's why we need to give them the resources they need so our Guardsmen can continue to serve. Last year, I announced a pilot program for drill weekend childcare for Army National Guardsmen. In its first year, the program's expanded from 6 to 15 states. Those include Arkansas, Colorado, Idaho, Massachusetts, Maryland, Minnesota, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Ohio, Oregon, Virginia, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin. I say that, so if you're in that state, hopefully you're aware. If not, you are now. Currently, we only have 59 children from 39 families enrolled in the Drill Weekend Child Care Program. We expect those numbers to increase as more soldiers and their families become aware of the pilot and as we look to scale the program across the 54. The program is not without challenges, however, reflecting child care shortages all across the nation. The biggest challenge is recruiting providers who deliver child care on weekends. Providers have cited numerous reasons not to be open on weekends, from insufficient staffing to insufficient reimbursement rates. But Child Care Aware of America continues to seek providers, and we continue to find solutions to those issues. In addition, the NGBJ-1 is working with Headquarters Department of the Army to pilot another resource called We Care, which is slated for the first quarter of FY24. We prioritize child care because our National Guard families matter, and they're another reason why we serve. Now that we've looked at the heart of our service, our people, let's take a wider view, because why we serve is not just for ourselves and our family, it's for our states and the communities we call home. When we serve our states and our communities in the National Guard, we have the unique opportunity to see the immediate impact of our service. In February of this year, a 150-car train derailed just outside of East Palestine, Ohio. Among its cargo were toxic chemicals, including vinyl chloride, a volatile gas, and suspected carcinogen. In response to this incident, both Ohio and West Virginia activated National Guard units. The Ohio Guardsmen set up a barricade around the wreckage and directed traffic. Their 135th Military Police Company helped local law enforcement evacuate more than 1,500 East Palestine residents. And within the hour, the 35th Civil Support Team from the West Virginia National Guard was preparing to deploy to Ohio. The team included a nuclear medical science officer who helped process water samples, a plume model specialist who forecasted potential hazardous airborne plumes, 3 survey specialists who collected air and water samples, and 2 members who worked with on-scene counterparts and emergency management officials. The rapid response by the Ohio and West Virginia National Guards helped save lives, property, and critical infrastructure. But if you'd ask the members of the West Virginia CST, they'd say they were just being good neighbors. After all, after the 2014 Elk River chemical spill in West Virginia, the first team on the ground was the Ohio National Guard's 52nd CST. It was an honor for them to return the favor. Every year our communities face disaster, whether natural, man-made, or the failure of critical infrastructure. They come in the form of train derailments and hurricanes, civil unrest and floods, cyber incidents, wildfires, tornadoes, and blizzards. And in every crisis, you'll find the National Guard, hoisting families to safety, driving high-water vehicles full of badly needed supplies, rescuing stranded hikers, battling wildfires, and providing emergency medical care. This is one of the many reasons why consistent, predictable degree of funding is so important. We rely on NGAUS to buy equipment that fills the gaps and allows us to respond effectively. We have countless NGAUS success stories about off-the-shelf solutions we've used both in combat and in our communities. Seaborne detection kits, training simulators, radios, protective eyewear, water buckets, the very materials we use to do our jobs. That's why we will continue to advocate for robust NGAUS funding, because the communities we serve are counting on us. And it's our success in the homeland that creates the most dramatic pictures and the most indelible impressions. It's why for so many people, the National Guard is synonymous with disaster response. But let's zoom out a little bit further and get a different perspective. Because if the question is why we serve, we cannot forget our primary purpose. We exist to fight and win our nation's wars. Why we serve is to protect our nation. We do that by defending our homeland and deterring attacks. We do that by training for combat. We do that by playing a role in every aspect of our national defense strategy. We do that by investing in our force, preparing to defend our nation in a volatile security environment. Because we serve our nation, we have to ensure both the Army and the Air National Guard are positioned for success. For the Army, that means bringing division alignment to full operating capability. For the regular Army, division alignment means consistent and echelon training so there can be greater consistency. It also means more cooperation between the active and reserve components, so there is greater familiarity and trust when it comes time to deploy. For the National Guard, division alignment means better integration with the regular Army's divisions and the Joint Force. That means more predictable training and deployment rotations, and formations that look the same and are interoperable. This gives us greater capacity to build and sustain readiness and supports our modernization efforts. It also gives us the chance to increase the talent pool for leadership positions. Division leadership positions are less constrained by geography, so we can consider a wider, more diverse group of candidates to find the best people for the job. Over the past 3 years, we've worked closely with the Army, the division commands, and the adjutants general. And I'm proud to announce today we are declaring full operating capability for division alignment. On the Air Force side, we're also seeing signs of progress in our fighter recapitalization efforts. There are standalone fighter recapitalization bills in both the House and the Senate, and related amendments or anticipated amendments in both versions of the fiscal year 24 National Defense Authorization Act. If so, there is a strong chance we will see language in the NDAA requiring the Air Force to maintain 25 fighter squadrons and produce a plan to fully recapitalize the Air National Guard fighter fleet. Thank you. We've also seen increased interest from the Air Force in finding follow-on fighter missions for our highest risk squadrons in Michigan and Maryland. While there is still much work to do, the momentum is positive. But there are other areas of concern, specifically when it comes to the National Guard's space professionals. Nearly 30% of the Space Force's operational readiness resides in the National Guard. It is imperative we align our Air Guard space assets to ensure they remain manned, trained, equipped, and modernized in line with Space Force standards and Space Command priorities. There is currently a bill in the House to establish a Space National Guard, the most efficient, cost-effective way to integrate our expertise and experience into the Space Force, and we await the conference outcome from this year's NDAA. Until then, we have to continue to engage with Air Force, Space Force, and congressional leadership. We have to continue to share our story and explain the value of the National Guard. We have to be clear about why we serve and what we bring to our nation. But our impact does not stop at our borders. Indeed, we serve to preserve the free, open, rules-based international order. We are in an era of strategic competition, and the competition is fierce. Just last month, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the State Partnership Program, which now has 88 partnerships with 100 nations. Over 700 senior government and military officials from 93 partner nations attended the event. One of them was Inara Mayornese. Inara was born in Latvia under Soviet occupation. Her father had been deported to Siberia twice. Her grandmother remembered a time before Soviet occupation, a time when Latvia was independent, sovereign, and free. Her grandmother taught her Latvian songs, and though Christmas was forbidden by the Soviet Union, and though occupiers were all around, she would sing Christmas carols. When Latvia gained its independence in 1991, Inara was 20 years old. She remembered her father and grandmother crying. She explained after suffering in Siberia, hunger, after repression, after they came back home, to have freedom and to have sovereignty, to have independence, to have our life back, it was a miracle to them. Inara had never dreamed about going into politics because there was no politics, just oppressive powers and the KGB and the Communist Party, which controlled all aspects of their life. But today, she is Latvia's Minister of Defense, and Latvia's partnership with the Michigan National Guard is one of our oldest and strongest partnerships in the SPP. The State Partnership Program remains one of the most successful and valuable security cooperation programs in the entire defense enterprise. We're interested in expanding the program in the years ahead, and we're finding other nations are interested as well. Finland and Sweden have expressed potential interest in the SPP and are currently in discussions for partnerships. Finland and Sweden have been longtime security partners, and we look forward to deepening these relationships. In addition, the success of the SPP program is resonating with European countries who historically have remained neutral, such as Austria, who partnered with Vermont in 2021, and recently, Switzerland. Switzerland is currently reviewing the relationships that other nations share with the National Guard and assessing the possibility of the program in their future. Interest from these nations validates the SPP model, especially against the backdrop of the current conflict in Ukraine. And speaking of Ukraine, earlier this year, California Guardsmen and their Ukrainian partners once again reunited, this time in Poland. The Ukrainian focus was behavioral health, and the California National Guard had expertise and resources to share. But the Ukrainians had some lessons for the California counterparts as well. In the words of Lieutenant Colonel Dustin Harris, Chief of Behavioral Health at the California National Guard, one of the most important things to remember is the Ukrainian troops don't get to go home. They're fighting on their own territory. They're in constant war. What they're going through with their forces, they're going to have to deal with for decades. Our intent is to make sure that they have what they need, the framework to help their troops, to help their entire nation. That is a powerful component of the State Partnership Program, an insight into our global impact, an awareness of the world in which we operate, an opportunity to be the partner of choice throughout the globe, and a living reminder of why we serve. We all have reasons to serve. We have reasons we drill, reasons we train, reasons we leave our civilian jobs and our loved ones behind. We have reasons we strive and sacrifice, and reasons we wake up the next day and choose to do it all over again. Why do we serve? We serve because this profession of arms offers untold opportunity to everybody ready to earn it. We serve because there's no better feeling than your family's arms around you when you return from deployment. We serve because somewhere in the aftermath of a hurricane, a terrified child is trapped in the rubble. We serve because a national defense strategy cannot succeed without the National Guard. We serve because being the partner of choice can mean the difference between freedom and oppression. We serve because we are a local force with global reach, and we are making a difference all along the way. And we serve because at the end of the day, someone has to stand up and do the right things for our families, for our communities, for our nation, and for our world. This is why we must keep our promise to be always ready, always there. I want to thank all of you for your service and for your time and attention. I have a few minutes I'd like to finish out with, but until then, I'd like to take some time to address your questions. So please, if you want to grab a mic, I will walk down and visit with you. Okay.
Sir, Captain Rogo, Georgia Army National Guard. Implementing change or training objectives at your level can take a significant amount of time to get down to the individual soldier level. What changes would you like to see be made, and what objectives should we be focused on so we can go back and relay that information to our formations?
Okay, I was trying to find you for a minute there. So training with division alignment?
So implementing change at your level can take a significant amount of time to get down to the individual soldier. What changes would you like to see be made, and what training objectives should we be focused on so we can go back and relay that to our formations?
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Change happens with you guys. And that's the reason that I meet with the adjutants general every Thursday on a phone call to try and flatten what we're learning across the organization. But at the end of the day, I need you to relay to your battalion and brigade and division commanders those things that are preventing you from building readiness in the short amount of time that you have with your guardsmen. That way, for me and the National Guard Bureau staff, the whole reason we exist is so our guardsmen show up on a drill weekend and train. We are there to support you, and I need you to relay to us all those ways that we can get in there and fix those things that are preventing you from doing your job. But at the end of the day, we rely on you, our company grade officers, NCOs, our soldier and airmen, because you're there at the point of the spear. And we expect you to take that initiative and do those things that you know are the right things to do. Because at the end of the day, as much as I'd like to be on the battlefield with you, it's going to be you and them. And when they look to you, they want to know that you've done everything you can. And I want to feel confident I have done everything at my level to make you successful. So we got to work together. Like everything, it's teamwork. But thanks for that question. Hold on.
Good afternoon, sir. Captain Cherry from the Illinois Army National Guard. My question for you was posed in our CGO OPD, but we didn't have time for it. So I'm going to rephrase it a little bit and make it more broadened. So in terms of bonuses and retaining talent, sir, currently our AGR officers and enlisted as well as our technicians aren't able to receive those bonuses. What can be done to retain some of those talent as we're seeing them go to the civilian sector?
Okay. So no one should ever be penalized for serving in the National Guard. If active duty is eligible for benefits and bonuses, and our M-Day soldiers are, so should our technicians and AGR. We can't discriminate across the board, and we're working very hard. One of those is a Technician Reform Act, where we've been working with the 54 to address issues like this that disadvantage our guardsmen. Because at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time and effort training our guardsmen, and you give up a significant portion of your life to serve your country and your community. And if there's any barriers that discriminate against you for doing that, then we need to resolve those. We're working on, as I said, on the Technician Act, and we're also working on it with the incentive pay in the bill. It's the Reserve Component Incentive Pay Parity Act, We're doing everything we can at that level to address that and get the resources so it's not an issue. But we will continue to work that, and this is something that we'll continue to talk with our adjutants general. But thank you for bringing that up. We can't be disadvantaged for doing what we do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Captain Kyle Baker, Battalion S4 and FSC Commander for the 1st of the 29th GSAB, Montana Army National Guard.
Cool.
So my question pertains to something I feel is probably near and dear to your heart. It's Army aviation. With the shrinking mission set and footprint in the Middle East for Army aviation, me as a company commander, the question I get asked quite a bit from my junior soldiers is what's next for Army aviation? And so I'm wondering if that steady state presence is something that you see, whether it's Eastern Europe, the Pacific Theater, something along those lines. Comes to me pretty frequently from my junior soldiers.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so with respect to Army aviation, this really goes back to the process we started 3 years ago with division alignment. What we want to do is make sure that every single one of our aviation units is assigned in the Army aviation side to a division or to a corps. Because if it's connected to a force structure, then it has an impact on the readiness of all the forces that it's associated with. And I've been working with Dave Duran, the new Army Aviation and the Army Guard Directorate, and we're making sure that all of our units are aligned under a aviation brigade concept and connected to one of our Guard divisions. And those that aren't are connected to a corps level or a theater aviation brigade. The intent there is when we look at potential resources or bill payers in the future, I'm trying to make sure every one of our units is connected to a higher level organization so it's less at risk of being cut. Now, when you talk about the future of deployments, associating those brigades with those divisions, as those divisions or subordinate elements deploy, we would expect those aviation brigades, which are part of that division, to be sending those forces forward with them so we get the sets and reps and we get used to working together. Because we have to work together every chance we can. We shouldn't be doing it for the first time on the battlefield. And I'll walk one little bit further on that when you talk about the future of Army aviation. The decision was made to go with the Bell 280 Valor for the FLRAA, Future Long Range Army Aviation. As they field that, we will advocate, and obviously General McConville recently retired, but I've been working with General George to make sure that the National Guard is in that fielding process. If you're flying Blackhawks, we're probably going to be flying them till 2050. They provide a great capability to our communities and to our nation, but as we bring in new systems, we have designed our aviation brigade structure to be part of that process so that, as I mentioned before, we have to be division aligned, but we have to be modernized as well. So we're working hard to make sure everybody has a future. Thank you. What are you doing after this? Sorry.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Second Lieutenant Sean O'Lady from the great state of New Mexico. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a few seconds to thank my state for its continued support in my career, no matter what rank I was. So, federal tuition assistance. According to the Office of People's Analytics, 54% of enlisted soldiers, people that are thinking about coming into the Guard, still say that paying for higher education is their #1 reason for joining. However, 66% of states currently have free tuition or an easy path to free tuition. Therefore, it's making tuition assistance, federal tuition assistance, less of an incentive. So my question is there a discussion, if not, can there be discussion of revamping and renaming federal tuition assistance to cover things such as fees, books, room and board? I'm gonna say my friend has $100,000 in student loan debt. No, I'm down to $65,000. And a lot of that was dealing with, it won't pay for, the federal tuition assistance won't pay for a PhD, won't pay for a second bachelor's, won't pay for room and board, things that some people, especially coming out of a pandemic, may need an additional bachelor's degree. So therefore, and I'm not asking for additional monies, sir, that's always the thing when there's a dollar sign, but an actual usage of the monies were allowed.
Okay. So that's a great question. And I think what we need to do is make sure that we raise this up through our advisory council to address that. We have asked questions about the ability to send people to technical schools or additional training using their GI Bill or their educational benefits. And you highlight a great point. Education benefits makes all of us better. It makes the individual better. It benefits their family, benefits their community, benefits their organization. And so we have to do everything that we do to facilitate folks to get that opportunity and take care of it. So I need to ask that question specifically about if we can use our resources. To me, if the resources are available and it's helping facilitate somebody get there, then we absolutely need to use it for that.
If I may be bold, sir, I do have it in the form of an XM, if I can leave it with you.
Oh, there you go. Oh, good. You didn't write anything bad about me yet. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. And if I could hit one point there, I would encourage all of you. You know, we talk about a lot of our guardsmen that come in for the education benefits, but not everybody takes advantage of those. And that's money we're leaving on the table, which is really important to our organization. So please, when you talk to your guardsmen that come in, make sure that they're actually utilizing those benefits because it's one of those things. It just takes a little bit extra time here and there. But if they don't use it, then it doesn't benefit them. And when it comes to re-enlist, they may have missed one of the opportunities that came into, and hopefully it will really help us with retention. Okay, right. Next question.
Good afternoon, sir. Lieutenant Roy Davis, call sign Hound Dog from the California Air National Guard. A question kind of stemming from the Secretary of the Air Force's conversation with us today. He mentioned that we are facing a continuing resolution going into fiscal year 24. Definitely guaranteed until the end of the calendar year, but potentially to last the remainder of the fiscal year. With that, is there any outlook from the National Guard level that you could provide to us here today, especially the CGOs who are going to be executing those drill periods, AT plans, et cetera? And also, is there any plans in place from NGB to help with expediting getting those resources once they become available as the CRs get extended so that we can receive them immediately rather than the historical 1 to 2 months before anything really hits the bank account and we can execute? Over.
Okay. So this is where I need all of your help. So the one thing that we do is we advocate on the Hill. I spend a lot of time on the Hill sharing the facts of the impact of a continuing resolution. And for those not familiar, it basically reduces last year's budget by 10%, but there's a lot of uncertainty there. SPP funding is a great example. So Congress always gives us an addition, which we very much rely on to be effective in our state partnership engagements, but we can't get that money under a continuing resolution. If it goes all year, we don't get the money at all. But if it goes until April or May, then we get the money, but we have to spend it all by the 30th of September. And many of our partner nations, they can't adjust that quickly. Sometimes we can't either because we have drill and annual training events. So I try and educate them and to share this as much as I can, the impact. But each and every one of us, you know, that's one of Congress's job, is to pass that. So we need to talk to them, and I would encourage you to talk to your elected officials and explain to them the importance and the impact. Many of them know this, but at the end of the day, it's the overwhelming response from constituents that's really going to hopefully get this thing done in a more timely manner. Because over years, it's a sequential impact that grows over time, and it's been really had a negative impact. So we're doing everything we can at our level. Our LL team is constantly engaged. Our senior leaders go up to the Hill, but we really need each and every one of you in your communities with your local elected officials to make sure that you relay that impact so that they can hopefully get us through this so we're not facing this year after year. Thank you. I think I have time for 3 more.
Good afternoon, sir. Lieutenant A. Chimpong with the Ohio Air National Guard, currently supporting SPP as the BAO Program Manager at J53. Regarding total force mobilization and deployment, what considerations are being made to ensure that we centralize how the components manage personnel and pay? I asked that because, sir, as a BAO program manager, part of my role is to ensure or assist the BAOs to PCS to their partner nations. However, when they in-process the COCOMs, they're turned away with the statement that they are National Guard service members and cannot be managed on the active duty pay system. So some BAOs go almost 3 to 6 months without pay, serving as a BAO in the partner nation, and potentially face financial issues.
Okay. So that's when you go VFR direct to me, okay? I can fix things one person at a time, and the soldier or airman and their family should not suffer as a result. I know our J5 is aware of this, and we're working with the combatant commanders so that they are never disadvantaged for what we ask them to do. Particularly going to a foreign country and not getting paid for a couple of months is something that's completely unacceptable. And I would share this with everyone in the room. If there's events like that, please do not hesitate to get directly to your adjutant general. Stuff like that is taking care of people, and we say people are our number one priority, and they are. And if we're not fixing those things as absolutely fast as possible, then we're not doing our job. So thank you for bringing that, and please, my aide will link up with you after this if this is continuing. But as you find out about that, please let me know. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, over to the left.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Second Lieutenant Yusova from the state of Delaware. I belong to the 31st CST of Delaware. The question is, all the CSTs are chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear specialists. We are deployable within the country. We're on 24/7 call. And back to the question, how ready do you think we are to the events of chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear events, in considering the situation in Ukraine and Russia right now? And is there a possibility for CSTs to be deployable outside of the country?
Okay, so they're currently relooking at the higher Seaburn Enterprise right now, and whether or not that capability, if it meets the current standards. I know they're looking at all the equipment, all the training of our personnel, and they're actually relooking at the entire structure to make sure, is it what we need, is it where we need it, and is it capable to do whatever we ask it to do? So we're waiting for the outcome of that basically study, which should be coming out hopefully later this year, and all of our units will be the first to know where we go with that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I got 2 more. Good. You?
Sir, Lieutenant Richard Wagner from the Arkansas Air National Guard. In 1971, Major General Winston P. Wilson established the premier marksmanship competition for the National Guard. Sir, my question is, would you consider doing us the honor of being in the opening shot ceremony as the Chief of the National Guard Bureau for the 53rd Annual Winston P. Wilson National Guard Marksmanship Shooting Competition?
Okay, so I actually would love to. I actually did that as a tag of Oregon, and I've been to Winston before, and they're probably still laughing, but so I'm in this dilemma. Do I go and prove that I can't shoot, or do people just, he didn't show up, so they just assume I can't shoot? So at this point, I'm in a win-win, so I will do everything I can to make it down there. It's a great event, and really, if you're not familiar, the National Cyber Competition, actually I believe even the international was won by National Guardsmen. So we have some phenomenal folks out there. Yep. I am not one of them, but I try. So I will do my best to make it out there. Would love to be part of that. It's a great event you guys do. Thank you. Okay, last question, and I need my aid because I just ran out of ammo. Similar when I'm on the range. Okay.
Sir, W1 Shelton from Utah.
Yes.
We've spoken a lot about recruitment and retention and the difficulties with that. I have noticed it's particularly acute in technical fields where they can make so much more on the civilian side. What is being done within the Department of Defense and the National Guard to try to close that skill gap and recruit and retain those technical experts? And have they considered, or would they consider, incentive pay similar to jump pay or the defense language proficiency bonus for industry certifications?
You know, actually they are. We do talk about this and the appropriate way to incentivize pay for people with unique skill sets where there's a significant demand on the outside where it's hard for them to make that choice. Obviously, the key that we have to do is make sure that we're taking care of our people, providing that incentive. We also have a direct commissioning program where folks with unique skill sets that the military needs, where they can direct commission or come in directly, because it's difficult for us to create that capability on a short term. Now, we've only used that in a few cases, but I think we're getting better at it. But to your point, at the end of the day, when you look at it's the same thing with pilots and airborne and other units as well. It's the incentive pay to help recognize that special skill set and the sacrifice that they're making financially, potentially, on what they could do on the civilian side. So we are looking at that. All services are looking at that because we spend a lot of money training folks on unique skill sets, and we want to make sure we retain that. In many cases, after your enlistment or your time is through, providing an adequate incentive, it'll encourage people to stay in and retain that investment we made. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. There's a lot of Tootsie Rolls, by the way. So to kind of come back to what we talked about earlier, you know, today we've talked about why we serve, why we do what we do, and why we're always ready, always there. But there's one reason above all others, and that reason is the future. We serve for the future, for global stability, for the continuation of this great American experiment. And these are not self-executing endeavors. They are not given, they are not granted. They are earned, and they are earned anew by every generation of American service members. That is why it is so important to retain our talented soldiers, airmen, and their families. That is why it is so important there are people willing and able to continue our National Guard legacy. For all of us, across every service, we're concerned about recruiting and retention. Right now, the Army Guard is projected to meet end strength. The Air Guard is running about 3,500 airmen short of their goal. The good news is that service retention does remain high. We're taking action on this by improving community outreach and bolstering our recruiting and retention programs. But there's still work to do, and it's a job for every single one of us. I am blessed to still wear the uniform, something I cherish every day as the end of my service comes closer to the horizon. As that horizon approaches, as it will for everyone here, perhaps the greatest responsibility we have is to ensure we leave the National Guard better than we found it. That starts with making sure there is someone behind us, someone who is trained and ready to take our place, someone willing to stand in the breach when our nation calls and who is prepared for what the unknown future holds. Whether we are conscious of it or not, each of us is a recruiter. We, and that means everyone here today, whether you're currently serving or not, need to make a concerted effort to recruit the future of our National Guard. This doesn't mean we all have to become actual recruiters. There are many ways to recruit, and many of those you are doing already. It's telling your story, it's attending static displays or recruiting events, and telling people about what you and your outfit do. It's setting an example everywhere you go both in and out of uniform, because believe me, people know who you are, and they watch what you do, and their views of the military is often shaped by your action or your inaction. Today, we see a nation where there is division and distrust. We see polarization on issues of race and economics, politics and ideology, and little faith in the institutions that underpin our society. This has borne dysfunction, disillusion, and discord. And unfortunately, our armed forces are not immune. Too many have weaponized our profession of arms to political ends. That has affected the public's perception of military service, and with it, our recruiting and retention. And if you think our competitors and our adversaries aren't watching this closely, I'm sorry to say that you're mistaken. But I believe we can step back from the ledges of extremity. We can seek commonality and find common purpose. We can look beyond ourselves to find ever greater possibilities. We can rebuild the trust that makes our nation possible and the trust that makes our military successful. We are one country, the United States of America. We are still the nation that established a worldwide precedent for openness, democracy, and freedom. We are still the nation where good people make great things happen, where there are still men and women willing to sacrifice everything for the sustainment of all we hold dear. So one of the most important things you can do, and I would argue we must all do, is do your job. Do it well, remain apolitical, and live both the military's and your own personal values. It might just make the difference to someone considering military service. But even more important, it will help with retention. Not just retention of our soldiers, airmen, and families, but the retention of our cherished principles and values. They are the things that we fight for. They are why we must keep our promise and be always ready, always there. Thank you.